Welcome to my channel. This video is for a Christmas ruffle wreath. If you haven't done so, please subscribe and don't forget to tap that bell for notifications on my uploads and live streams. I am using a 14-inch wreath form from Dollar Tree in these silver metallic chenille stems. Now I'm going to start by attaching these to the center middle wire there at the cross wire. So 6 of these, all right there where that small wire crosses, so they are not going to move around, they're not going to slide around. Just one each, and you can actually cut these in half and do them at half, but if you start attaching like ribbon spikes and stuff, it might end up being too small, so you can start out with the long ones. Now I'm going to attach 8 around the outer, and I'm doing the outer 2. You can actually do the middle 2 or the outer 2. It doesn't matter. Either way, I kind of change it up sometimes. And if you just fold that over after you've done the first one, either way, it doesn't matter which direction you fold it over, it'll show you where to attach the next one. And just keep doing that, and you should have 8 on there. It doesn't always match up exactly, but it'll give you a good guide on where to put those 8 outer ones. Okay, I'm using those really pretty 10-inch 10-yard deco mesh. It's a full foil. This is what I say when I call something a full foil. This is what I mean. And it is super pretty. It's going to be really pretty with the lights hit it. So whether it's inside or outside and the sun hits it, or it's got Christmas lights hitting it, or somebody decides to put Christmas lights on, it's going to be really pretty. So cut these at 24 inches. And you see I slide it over after I measure the 24. It just makes it easier to cut it if I slide it over. Now you could go 22 inches if you needed to. It just depends on how much mesh you're wanting to use. On the last 2, so I cut 12 of these at around 24 inches, and then when I get to the end of the roll, so I'm going to cut off that mess right there where it's folded over, but I take that last section of mesh and I cut it in half for my last 2. So you need 14 of these, and I cut 12, and then I take whatever's left on the roll and cut it in half. And now I spiral and ruffle the mesh, and you can see I fold it back over, or turn it back over when I'm done. I always like to roll and spiral and ruffle it upside down. It just works better for me. And then, but you got to remember to flip it back over when you attach it on your wreath. And I don't know who came up with this technique, but I love it. It actually, to me, it reduces the fraying, or what you can see of fraying, because you're rolling those ends up where the fraying would happen, and then you're ruffling the middle. So I do have another tip for you. If you cut your mesh like I do, where you cut those 2 long pieces at the end, they are going to be much longer than 24 inches. So what I do is I attach one on one side of the wreath and one on the other side of the wreath, and I usually do it on the outer side too, because the outer section is actually it's got more room, so you'll want to fill that in more, so use those longer pieces there. And so you're going to have 2 ruffles that are bigger, so you want one on each side to even out your wreath. And then I'm just going to quickly show you all these other ones and just make your way around. You can start on the inner section, you can start on the outer, you can go back and forth. It doesn't matter how you attach them, what order you attach them. Just make sure you get all 14 covered, and you will have a nice full wreath. Now you can go back and do another roll of mesh. You know, if you want to do 2 colors or 2 patterns, you can just go and stack them on top of each other, or you can do like every other ruffle, one color and one the other color. It doesn't matter. So now I'm going to add some tubing. I love tubing. Not everybody does, but I just think it's a fun element to add, and you can do different things with it. So I'm just using those chenille stems that are already on there that attach the mesh, and I'm just going to twist those on there. I made a little loop, and then I'm going to run them around the wreath. So I'm just kind of making a poof out of them and just going around and twisting those chenille stems to tie them on there very tightly. And I'm using red and silver, if you can't tell, the same as the mesh. So when I use the same colors as the mesh, I'm just adding a new or a different, not a technique, but a different element into the wreath. I like to have lots of different elements, lots of different textures and stuff in my wreaths. So now I'm just going to quickly show you going around. And again, I'm just making a poof, kind of a poof, you know, so that it's sticking up a little bit, but not a lot, but enough where you can see it going all the way around. And you can attach it to everywhere there's mesh attached, a ruffle, or you can just go around the middle, or you know, the inner middle or the outer middle, just whatever you want to do. So these are cable tie mounts that I'm attaching to the sign. If you have a really heavy, thick sign, you can staple ties to it very easily. But with these thinner signs, you really got to be careful on how and what you attach. Now these cable tie mounts come with a double sticky backing, and they will come off. So you really got to pull that double sticky backing off completely. And then I put E6000 on the sign, and I stick the cable tie mount on there. And then I'm going to go around, I'm just twisting it so the glue gets all around it. Now I'm going and outlining with the hot glue. That way it will seal it immediately, but the E6000, once it dries, you know, it can take 24 hours for E6000 to dry, that will make it seal completely. And then I'm using the top of the sign, the hanger that already came on there, to hang it on the wreath as well. But I like to get that out of the way, let it get to drying before I move on to other elements of the wreath. So I'm going to use my bow maker, and I'll make one bow with the bow maker, and then I'm going to show you another bow just hand tied. For my first bow, I am using my bow maker, and I'm making these first two tails about 18 inches long each. I'm going to go a little bit shorter with the truck ribbon, and I didn't measure it, but that's about how much, so 3 or 4 inches maybe. Went quite a bit shorter. I usually only go an inch or two, but I wanted a little bit difference there. Now I'm going to start my bow, and I'm just going over there at least an inch to make sure it gets tied off before I make my first loop. And I'm not measuring these loops with the bow maker. I have no idea how long they are. I can just tell you that the loop is going over about 3.5 to 4 inches over the bow maker. And I forgot to put my chenille stem through. I haven't used the bow maker very much, so this is still pretty new to me. And I'm going to make my second bow, I'm going to hand tie, so you can kind of tell the difference and, you know, decide which one you like better. Now always make your loop, make sure that the pretty side is always facing up, and then you have to twist the ribbon to make sure that it's always facing up. And I'm kind of counting on each side to make sure I'm making my loops the same. So I don't know if it's really easier or not to use this. You know, after I use it a few times, I might find that it is easier. But right now it's more difficult for me, actually, because, you know, I'm used to making them a certain way, and when you start something new, it's more difficult. And this is just a red and white striped glitter 2.5 inch width ribbon. And so far I have 2 loops on each side, so this will be my third loop. And so another loop on this side. And if you don't have anything to hold your ribbon in, it gets twisted, and that causes a little bit of an issue as well. I do have some hacks for that, but I didn't use one there. Again, I go over an inch or two just to make sure you have plenty. Now I'm going over with the truck ribbon. Again, you want to twist it to make sure the pattern is on top, or the pretty side is on top, and I'm making them a little bit smaller than the bottom, so that way the bottom ribbon, you can see the loops from the bottom ribbon sticking out from the top ribbons. Just going to carefully pull that out of there, and then twist that around. Pull it tight. You always want to pull that as tight as you can, and then give it a good twist. But I am going to run another chenille stem before I twist it off. That way I have plenty to hang on the wreath, because those are pretty small, but since I wrapped them around the front and then went back around the back. So you want to have some long wreath ties or chenille stems there to hang on your wreath as well. Now I can just fix my loops Just want to fluff everything up. And then those short ends, you want to either fold those over or cut them clean and make sure that they look nice, because you might be able to see a little bit. And you see the top one there I have sticking out. I could have made a middle loop, but I just decided to leave a little small ribbon hanging off the top. But I am going to cut that at a V shape or a dovetail. Just cut at an angle towards where you fold it. Don't crease it. Now for my hand-tied bow. Again, 18 inches for the tail. Just want to pinch that. Get my chenille stem ready. I'm going to measure my loops at 12 inches. I'm making a big bow here. Twist that ribbon before you make your next loop. And you're going back and forth. You want one on the left side of your hand and loops on the right side of your hand, or north and south, whichever way you're holding your bow. And just keep going back and forth until you get the desired amount of loops that you want. So I've got three on each side for a total of 6 loops. Then you just move that ribbon back down where you want it if you're wanting both your tails going down the same direction. And then you can go ahead and tie it off, or you can use the clip to clip it to hold it in place. It's just up to you, whatever works best for you. Now I'm going to give those loops one more twist. That way the pattern is not upside down. And I'm going to do this before I twist it off, because it will work better. So you just have to give those loops another twist. That way all the pattern is in the right direction, instead of having one side upside down and one side right side. I'm going to go ahead and twist that off with a chenille stem. Again, pull it tight and give it a couple of twists so it's nice and secure. See, that's a big loopy bow. Now for my second layer, this is going to be the bottom layer. I'm going 20 inches on the tail, so I want to go longer. And then I'm going 13 inches for the loops. So I want the loops slightly bigger too, because this, like I said, this is going to be the bottom layer. So I want it to, for you to be able to see that behind the top bow. You can make everything all the same size. They do kind of get lost in the background. It just depends on what look you're going for. If you're wanting a bow that's like rounded looking and where the loops are all the same size, then do that. But if you're wanting one that gets gradually bigger as the more layers of ribbon, then you do it like this. And again, I do it the same way. I twist, make a loop, twist it, make another loop on the opposite side. Just keep going back and forth until you get however many loops you want. And then move that last tail down where you want it. So this is what it's going to look like, the two of them together. Go ahead and twist those together. Before even cutting that last tail, you can go ahead and twist them together and then worry about cutting that last tail. You want to make sure that you're not using good scissors that are going to get ruined by cutting wired ribbon, because I have gone through several pairs of scissors. So I always have some scissors that are for ribbons that don't have wire, and then as those get dull, I rotate them down to use on like wired ribbons. So that's a really cute bow. Hand tied, super easy to hand tie a bow. Now I'm going to add this bell in the center. Sometimes I will dangle them down from the bow, so they're not really in the center, but they're kind of dangling down where the tails kind of hit. But this one I'm putting it right in the center, and that's why I put the chenille stem right through the hanger of the bell. But you could add some ribbon, like some small ribbon, to the bell so it would hang down loose. It just depends on, again, the look you're going for. So I, again, added a chenille stem to the back of this, so you will have a longer hanger. Make sure that you have enough of a hanger to hang on your wreath. So this is my biggest bow. You see how simple that was? So cute. Just move your loops around until you get them where you want them, and then you want to cut the dovetails again, of course. So here is my sign that's all dry. and you just have to run a chenille stem or some kind of wire through these cable tie mounts. Just give them a twist. Super simple. But again, you want to take off that sticky backing and use a really good glue. I used the E6000 and the hot glue if you skipped over that part. Because I did, the first few times I used those, I put E6000 on the sticky backing and stuck that to the sign, but what was happening was the plastic part was separating from the sticky backing because there wasn't any good glue holding that together. So now I removed that sticky backing. Now you just want to figure out where you want your sign. You want it in the middle, or if you want it off to the side. The placement of those mounts will kind of determine where you're going to place it too. If I wanted to put the sign off to the side, then I would have put those mounts more in the middle of the sign instead of on the ends towards the sides. So you just want to work those through, find some holes between the mesh. I do not like to try and shove chenille stems through the mesh because you're going to make it fray. You can rip it, tear it. So I, poke around in there and find the little gaps in between the mesh, or where it's gathered, where it's attached to the wreath form in the center. You can poke around in there and find a place to shove those chenille stems through so they won't mess anything up. And then I just used that wire hanger that was already on the top of that sign because it was a good wire hanger, and I just had to add a little piece of chenille stem to attach it to the wreath form. And you can tell I pulled it a little snugger on the bottom than I did at the top. I always twist the chenille stems just a couple of times after I pull the sign as tight as I want it, and I give it a couple of twists and then turn it over and check on it, which is what I was just doing, and make sure that the sign is as tight as I want it or as loose as I want it. And then I go back and do what I just did, where I'm twisting them off completely and wrapping them completely around the wreath form so they're not all loose and hanging out. So now I'm going to add this huge ball ornament. I wanted to do one of those. So you just have to, you can take that little plastic end there off like I did and put some hot glue and then just shove that into one of the chenille stems. But make sure you shove it all the way in or it'll be hanging loose. But you can also leave those hangers on there and use those, but make sure you hot glue those on or they will fall off. So these are just some little elf legs, and I'm just put some hot glue on the bottom of those, and then I'm shoving them through that chenille stem where the mesh is gathered and attached to the wreath where it's wrapped in a chenille stem. I just shoved those through that, so I didn't go through the mesh. I just went under that chenille stem to help hold that. And then that hot glue kind of run on there, so the hot glue is going to help it stay too. I don't really like to hot glue items to my wreaths, but sometimes in circumstances like that, it really just works better if you glue it. And the reason why I do that is because, every year I'll get my wreaths out, and sometimes something will be faded on them or just doesn't look good. So you can take some things off and freshen them up. You don't have to completely remake a whole new wreath unless you want to. So there's some things you can use. You can salvage some things on your wreath, and so if you don't glue stuff, then it's much easier to save things. But if you're gluing all your ornaments and stuff to the mesh, good luck saving anything on it. So there are my bows, and here's a way to just give those tails a nice natural curve, or you can roll them up and spiral them like this and just kind of tug on them a little bit, and it gives them a really cute spiral. Or you can just roll up the ends and have these cute little ends that are curled, and then you can also make the tails kind of wavy as well. And I've shown that several times. I'm not sure if I'm going to show that here. I don't think I do. I might though. Hold on. It's been about a month since I made this video. I apologize. It took me so long to edit it. So I'm kind of rewatching this and relearning how I made it. I did cover up quite a bit of that sign, but I love some big bows on the wreath, so you can still see it. It's just kind of covered up a little bit, and you can just twist your bows like I'm doing here if it doesn't work out right. If you don't like the placement of them or the placement of the tails, just give them a twist and then it'll move the tails over. And that's those picks from the elf legs and stuff. You can just zip tie those down or take chenille stems and twist those down too if they're sticking out. So I added the little snowmen. They were just like the elf legs, but instead of gluing those in, I did the zip ties. But the elf legs would not work like that. I tried it and they just worked better to go through the chenille stem that was attached in the middle of the mesh with the hot glue. Now I'm just adding some jingle bells, and I'm just using those chenille stems that were in the middle of the mesh ruffles. So you can use those chenille stems that are on there for lots of things. So I'm just running bells on there, 1, 2, or even 3, and then twisting those chenille stems to hold them on there. And then it hides those chenille stems. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just going around. I got a package of silver bells, and I'm just going back and forth and putting them in different places. And now I have these little red glitter, I believe they were cedar picks, and there were 5 to a package. And they've got a thin wire. They're just floral picks, so they got a thin wire in the stem, and so they were real easy to wrap around the wreath form. I didn't have to do any gluing, but you can glue those as well if you prefer to do that. And here it is finished, guys. It was so much fun to make. This was the first Christmas wreath I made this year, and so I was excited to do that. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, share, like, comment. Please be kind with your comments, and happy crafting, everyone.